Hello, students, and welcome to our asynchronous method as part of Social Work 220 Generalist Social Work Practice. So for today, we're going to be discussing social work helping methods, but focusing on secondary methods. Okay, so this will be the outline of my presentation for today. So there are three secondary methods in social work, and these are social action, social welfare administration, and social work research. This is how it looks like, considering all the other methods, including the primary methods, which are social casework, social group work, and community organization. But we are now onto the secondary method, and you can see it here and also in the next slide. Again, we'll be focusing on the three secondary methods of social work practice, and you will be learning about them in the next few slides. The first would be social action. What is social action? When did it ever start? As early as 1922, Mary Ellen Richmond already introduced the concept of social action as part of social work practice. This is Mary Ellen Richmond, and this is what she said. She said that social action is mass betterment through propaganda and social legislation. So even during this time, there's already an effort for social workers to try to influence policy to to result to a better society. All right, now we proceed to understanding social action. What is it really? And I'm sure most, if not all of you, have had actual experience in joining social action activities. It could be in your own university, in your work, in your barangay, community, or even joining social action activities involving national policies. Pwedeng face-to-face na social action, pwede ring online, which has been extensively used in the last few months. So ano ba itong sinasabing social action? These are definitions which I thought are very comprehensive. And if you could look at the key words, we can see alter institutional policies, make changes in the distribution of power. It's basically, you know, sharing power and transferring it to those who are uh, vulnerable and part of our population that are not traditionally part of decision making. So, yun yung purpose niya is to influence and make changes in the decision making and the distribution of power. It is also an organized effort since you're helping to mobilize and influence policies, then it has to go through um, not just one shot activity, but a series of activities so that um, magkakaroon ng impact yung pag-impluwensya sa mga policymakers. Ang objective ng social action really is to create a richer and fuller life so that it can be enjoyed by citizens. That's why the purpose is to shape a socio-cultural environment. Ito rin yung mga iba pang goals ng social action, yung pagbibigay ng solution sa mass problems, pag-improve ng mass conditions, pag-impluwensya ng mga institutions, pag-introduce ng makabagong mechanisms or programs. So these all encompass what we call as social action. before we go on, can you think of any examples of social action that you have seen or you've been part of? And try to think and reflect what activities involve that particular action. What made it successful? What made it unsuccessful? Who were the mobilizers? So these are just some of the questions that you should reflect on as we proceed on to our study of social action. If you're a social worker and you've been tasked to organize social action activities, try to influence policy, try to help your community get better health um, programs, for example, what types of skills should you have, which may be different from the set of skills that you may have when you do social casework or social group work. So these are just some of the list of skills that you know are very useful if you're going to do social action work. First is rapport building. It's relational. You have to um, deal and engage with a lot of people, different stakeholders, people that you would like to mobilize, those whom you would like to help, and also establish rapport with decision makers, governments, for example. The second one is objective analysis of social situations and problems. It's important that if you're into social action, you are aware of why uh, the situation is how it is. Ano ba yung mga pangyayari sa lipunan? Bakit may mga ganong pangyayari sa lipunan? For example, during this pandemic, and if you would like to do social action in relation to how the government addresses COVID, you would like to engage decision makers so that we have better programs in health, you should have a good understanding of the health situation. Who are the decision makers, for example? Why are there poor health programs? How come they're not delivered properly? So these are some of the things that social workers should be aware of if you want to do social action. And you have to have the ability to use other methods of social work. Um, this is what we call the intervention part. When we do social action, it doesn't mean we forget about casework or group work, because when you mobilize people, you will have to deal with individual persons, with groups, like those who are in need of um, assistance during the pandemic. Who are they? Who are the unemployed? And you also have to be aware of community organizing skills, because you have to, this requires community engagement. And a social worker doing social action programs require a certain degree of managerial skills, because one has to handle organizations, coordinate and collaborate with various groups and local leaders. So uh, you have to have some skills in managing not just people, but also managing resources, managing events. Uh, those are the things that we have to be aware of. Effective verbal, and I just added the online communication, but um, communication is very important, especially in social action. If you have to engage with different stakeholders, if you have to do lobbying and convincing barangay captain or the city mayor, then you have to have a good communication and ability to convey the messages on behalf of the people that you are mobilizing and the people that you are helping. Now I added online communication because we have seen a lot of online advocacy, online social action. Um, so it's important that social workers who want to go into social action activities be aware of how to use online platforms to influence decision makers. And yes, it's important for a social worker to know how to train local leaders. If you're doing social action, you are helping the marginalized, the poor. Sino-sino ba yung mga marginalized and those who are poor and vulnerable? These are the people that social workers would like to help and um, to try to influence society so that there will be better programs, better policies on behalf of the marginalized. This means that a social worker has to have that ability to train local leaders because when you mobilize a group or a community, um, you're not doing it alone. So it's important to be able to train local leaders so that there will be sustainability, even if that the program has already passed. The farmers or fisher folks or jeepney drivers that you have helped will still continue with the kind of work, will always try to engage decision makers for better programs and services. Let's continue with the skills which social workers should have or should develop if you want to go to social action. This kind of work entails confrontation with authorities and sometimes involves taking difficult positions. Um, are we equipped to actually confront or engage with people of authority, people who make the decisions? Are we knowledgeable enough of the issues that are involved in the social action? And it also um, it requires strategies and tactics. Negotiation, do you know how to negotiate? Persuasion, collaboration. These are some important skills that social workers will need if you are to go into social action. And then we have to remember that the main focus is to increase political pressure on decision-making process so that oppressed groups can receive equitable services, resources, and power. You're not only dealing with the marginalized and the oppressed groups, but you're also trying to articulate yung issues na kinakaharap nila, try to bring it to the table where decision makers discuss and make decisions. Now we go to the principles of social action. There are 6 principles which are conceptualized by Brito, who is a social worker. The first principle is credibility building. A social worker must establish certain rapport with the community, the group that he or she is helping, and they should have faith and confidence in the social worker. And then the second one is legitimization. Social workers should make people believe that yung mga actions nila are legitimate. Ano ba yung example ng mga actions? It could be publishing a position statement, writing to the congressman, actual demonstration, rally. So these are some of the actions which are part of, the program of social action. Dramatization. Ito yung mga strategies like slogans, emotionally powerful speeches, and rallies to create dramatic effects. I think you've been exposed to or you've been part of some of these types of activities when speakers on behalf of the community would share powerful speeches during a rally or even during a television interview or during a conversation with the media. And then dual approach. It's simply a combination of um, several constructive developmental activities which you would like to utilize as a social worker. The fifth one is multiple approach. Of course, you can do different approaches when you organize social action activities. You have to know which ones are effective, which ones would get the attention of decision makers. It would really depend on who are the key stakeholders that you want to engage with. That's why it's important to plan social action activities in advance. And it's important to understand not only the issues that you would like to raise, but also who are the stakeholders, who will be affected if changes are to be made. And the sixth principle is manifold programs. And this is aimed at tackling social, economic, cultural issues, among others. In any social action activity, you would definitely be targeting certain changes in the social, economic, and cultural issues in the society. Now, let's go to the types of social action. The first one is the elitist social action, as the word says, no? Ito yung mga action na initiate and conducted by the elites for the benefit of the masses. In this model, general public or the target group is not really involved. So it's basically engaging with authorities on behalf of marginalized groups. Ano bang example nito? One thing that I could think of is when UP students, for example, are trying to influence decision makers in on issues like protection of lumad communities, providing educational opportunities for the marginalized. Ito yung mga simpleng examples of how the elite could help engage on behalf of a marginalized group. So this means that the elite is not necessarily the rich, but it can also take to mean those who are not actually part of the marginalized, but are campaigning on behalf of the marginalized groups in society. And then there is also a what we call a popular social action, and I think this is a more sustainable way of doing social action because we involve a large section of people, and it can happen with or without elite participation. It means that you're actually enabling the marginalized, for example, farmer groups or fisher folks, to mobilize themselves and try to influence decision makers directly. And we've seen a lot of these examples among Filipino farmers, Filipino fisher folks, and even indigenous people and urban poor sector. We already have community groups that are doing this. As I have mentioned, we would really prefer the popular model of social action where people themselves are directly involved in engaging other stakeholders in influencing decisions. So I'll be focusing on Paulo Freire's conscientization model as part of the popular social action concept of engaging the people themselves, involving the people themselves. So this is Paulo Freire, and he wrote a very influential book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And ano ba yung ideas niya about doing social action? These are his words. He puts a lot of emphasis on educating the people, educating them about the oppression, the oppressed, and the oppressor. He noted the importance of raising awareness so that people are able to help themselves to determine yung kanilang development. This was also what he said. People are given opportunity to analyze and understand the social structures. This requires um, engaging and raising awareness of the marginalized and the oppressed and the vulnerable, um, help them to understand the social structures, why things are happening the way they are. Because according to Paulo Freire, to know is to change. And this certain model, conscientization model, emphasizes education as a tool for re-education and social action. All right, so continuing with Paulo Freire and using his model, ano ba yung mga roles ng social work in carrying out social action activities? What are the principles behind it? How do we do and go about educating the people? Ano ba yung mga philosophical basis of doing um, and implementing Freire's model of conscientization? Unang-una, a social worker has to treat people as equals with love, humility, dignity, and respect in a horizontal, not vertical, but horizontal relationship based on mutual trust. And then, a social worker is also a facilitator. Siya yung nag-create ng context for learning, liberation, and change. Facilitating is, enabling people to learn, to provide a framework for creative thinking and space for active participation. So yung premise nitong model na ito is really empowering the people, giving them the opportunity to think creatively and to participate uh, in to participate in the process of changing the society. A social worker is also a catalyst because he or she stimulate self-awareness of persons. People, the poor, the marginalized, and the vulnerable, they are able to understand why uh, society exists as they are. As an example, once self-aware, ang isang tao will be capable of clearly perceiving hunger as more than just not eating. So kung nakaka-experience ang isang tao ng hunger, naintindihan niya na hindi lang ito dahil hindi siya kumakain, but it is also a manifestation of a political, economic, and social reality of deep injustice. So may mga mas malalim na reasons why a person or persons or groups of people are experiencing hunger. It's not just because they don't eat, but there are deeper reasons for that. In a sense, people develop a holistic perspective of their own. Now we proceed to the second method, and that is the social welfare administration. As you are aware, mga social problems like poverty, poor health, disability, crime, um, and child abuse, for example, these social problems require the establishment of social welfare agencies. And this can be by the government, for example, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, and also by NGOs, non-government organizations like Plan International, Habitat for Humanity. These are organizations that have that are nonprofit and are collectively working for a common goal. So you cannot compare social welfare agencies with those of business organizations kasi magkaiba yung goals nila. One is for profit, yung business, and the other one is really non-profit. It's human development. So this requires a set of specialized knowledge and skills as well. Social welfare and administration, these are two concepts in one. Yung social welfare aspect, it means organized system of social services and institutions designed to aid individuals and groups to attain satisfying standards of life. And I think we have been able to discuss what social welfare is. And on the next phase is the administration part. How do we actually deliver programs and services so that it reaches our target beneficiaries? This definition says that administration is the universal process of efficiently organizing people and directing their activities towards common goals and objectives. So we have to marry the two to be effective as social workers. It's not enough that we have designed good programs, but it's also important that these are able to reach the people that we are targeting, the beneficiaries that we are trying to help. So these are some of definition of social welfare administration. One is it's a method of practice that looks for administrative and managerial skills among practitioners in the execution of welfare services. And then we also have to understand that it is used to transform policy into concrete social services. Ibig sabihin, it's good to have all those policy declarations like, for example, protecting the rights of children, but how do you actually transform it into something that is implementable, something that actually benefits those whom we want to help? And it is also a scientific and makes use of administrative techniques. Nandiyan yung planning, implementing, directing, monitoring, organizing, reporting, coordinating, and evaluation of services. So, meron siyang science and it makes use of different techniques so that yung delivery ng social service would be effective. And it administers yung mga programa within the setting of an agency. As I have mentioned, it has to reach the vulnerable, those we want to help, the disadvantaged and the weaker sections of the population, which is entirely different if you are to administer a business, for example. This one, iba yung measurement niya for success. Iba yung achievement niya if you're able to deliver the program and if it has been able to help the disadvantaged population, then that is a mark of a successful social welfare administration. Now we proceed to the scope of social welfare administration. What does it actually entail when you say you are doing social welfare administration? As mentioned earlier, it requires certain techniques and processes, scientific way of planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. These are all necessary so that yung mga social services will reach the target beneficiaries in an efficient and effective way. And I would like to highlight that planning is an important component in social welfare administration. It is an intellectual activity which require knowledge and vision about social causes and a prerequisite for good service delivery. So it's important for a social worker to be able to plan and design in a scientific way good programs which would actually benefit those we are trying to help. And importante din na magkaroon ng organizational skill as an administrator's raw material. The third method, secondary method in social work, is social work research. Now we proceed to the third method, which is the social work research. So what is it and what is the purpose of social work research? Ang social work research is actually yung application ng research methods as we understand them, social research, to the production of knowledge that we social workers need to solve problems in the practice of social work. Ano bang ibig sabihin nito? It means the research provides information na magagamit ng social workers prior to making decisions that affect their clients, programs, or agencies. ano ba yung mga programa, ano ba yung mga interventions and techniques that work? Ano ba yung mga intervention which do not work in a particular situation? So yung result ng social work research provides social workers with this particular knowledge to help improve the programs which they are implementing. Now we go to the importance of social work research. Unang-una, if you were to plan and implement development programs effectively, one has to have um, reliable and adequate data. Importante na patuloy yung pag-enrich ng social work profession through research so that our programs and projects become more effective and would really help the population that we are trying to help. Social work research, we should understand that it is a systematic and scientific study of social problems with the objective of producing knowledge for planning and carrying out social work problems. So maraming iba't ibang types of social work research. Merong evaluation research so that certain programs can be evaluated in terms of its effectivity and whether it has to continue, it has to be redesigned, or it has to be stopped. So social work research provides this information to planners and practitioners. Ito yung mga katanungan na gustong sagutin ng social work research. Unang-una, how do we make intervention and treatment effective in social work practice? Pangalawa, meron ding how do we deal with the problems faced by the social work practitioners in practicing their profession? Halimbawa ngayong may pandemic, ano ba yung mga issues and challenges that are faced by social workers in carrying out their duties amidst the pandemic situation? And then it helps build to the theory and knowledge of social work practice. Ito yung mga naisagutin ng social work research. Paano ba natin mapapailalim pa or mapapabuti ang set of knowledge at ang practice ng social work? How do we add to the theories and how to improve and deepen social work practice? I have a few examples of social work researches tulad nitong impact of Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program in the lives of beneficiaries in the municipality of General Aguinaldo. Ito ay isang type or isang example ng social work research which aims to measure the impact of the program and perhaps to provide guidance whether it should be continued, it should be improved. So ito yung one example, and another one would be this paper on does community-driven development build social cohesion or infrastructure? Another example of research which could help improve the program and could provide input in the design of development projects. And another one is this research on global work conditions in social work. So perhaps this is the type of research that would provide practitioners with a forward-looking perspective, what is in store in social work practice. And I think ngayong panahon na we are um, in a pandemic, and a lot of people, a lot of webinars are being organized to assess and find out how social work will change in the next few years given the new normal that we are entering into. So ano ba yung mga pagbabago, ano ba yung mga skills na mas kailangan natin ngayon, given the fact that we're entering a new phase, a new normal. So in summary, we've been able to cover secondary social work methods, and these are social action, social welfare administration, and social work research. So I'd like to end this presentation by thanking everyone for tuning in. And if you have questions and comments, you can jot them down. We can discuss it further during our meeting. And I'd like to direct you to these reference materials. This will also be posted on the Oobleck, so you can always go back to the slides. Again, thank you very much.